عليكم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This coughing is contagious here. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما واجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه أولئك الذين هدى الله وأولئك هم أولو الألباب. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. Yeah, I think I'm allergic to microphones. The title of this session was the final journey, or the last journey. We recently had, a wave of death, many deaths in the community, one after another. And anytime there are multiple incidents of people dying, people start asking questions, all kinds of questions about this life, the end of life, and questions about the death and its the process of death and what death is. So I just wanted to shed some light on this issue and maybe engage in a discussion. This is this is really a topic worthy of becoming a series of lectures on journey to the hereafter. Maybe we can call it journey to the hereafter. What happens, the various stages of life, and then what happens when people die, and then the transition itself, and then what happens from after death until the day of resurrection, and then maybe we'll talk about the day of judgment. Now all of this, I must say, is from the knowledge of the ghaib. It's from the knowledge of the ghaib. The ghaib is the unseen or the unknown, or something that you don't sense directly, right? And it will only be known to us if it is only known to us through or based on divine revelation. Only divine revelation. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can tell us about al-ghaib. And we only know about al-ghaib. You cannot speculate, you cannot assume, you cannot imagine. You only know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said and what His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said about al-ghaib. Now, the reason this issue is of many people have interest in knowing about it is because, one, it is mysterious, but two, anytime there's death or you go to a janazah or something like that, everybody thinks of their own day, like what will happen. And it is a fate that is awaiting for all of us. If you take the most popular subject, marriage, right? The most popular subject, if you take marriage, the most popular subject. Speaking of marriage, by the way, I don't know if this is appropriate or not for me to make an announcement. Not next Friday, but the following Friday, 8/8, the same day as the first day of the Beijing Olympics. We'll have a session. We have a special program about marriage. We're not going to be talking about marriage, but rather talk about the problem of marriage. We're not talking about marital problems, by the way. I don't want people to get the wrong message. No, we're going to be talking about the problem of marriage. Right? So, and maybe engage the youth and those who are looking forward to get married, and those who don't know what they're missing, and those who don't know what they're getting themselves into. We'll get them all, inshallah, to open up and to speak, and that will be an open discussion. But if you take a subject like marriage, marriage is not the fate of everyone. Right? Not everyone is going to get married. In fact, in some areas, in some Muslim communities, the statistics suggest that 40%, according to one particular statistic about sisters, it says 40% of sisters under 20 will end up not getting married, which is very, scary. But what I'm trying to say is that not everyone is going to get married. Not everyone is going to have a child. So there are these popular subjects. However, everyone is going to die. Not everyone is going to get rich, but everyone is going to die. And this is the one subject that everybody believes in and everybody knows, and no one has any doubt about it, no matter what their political affiliation, religious background, creed, whatever it is. Everybody knows that he or she will die one day. It's a matter of wanting to deal with it and think about it, or just, maybe stick our heads in the sand, and sometimes we don't like it. It's not a pleasant subject, and it's not. Indeed it is not a pleasant subject. As human beings, we go through all kinds of stages. We have a stage where we didn't, before we even came to this life, and we don't know much about it, except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had spoken to us, as it says in the Quran, in a life that we don't even remember. وَإِذَا أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took a covenant from the descendants and from the children of Adam before they even came to this life, as to who their Lord is, and they recognized and acknowledged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all did, by the way, including atheists, including, everybody. Everybody acknowledged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be the Lord and the Creator. Everybody. And if you wonder where that innate nature, where that inclination of worshipping Allah or longing to worship someone comes from, it comes from that incident. Right? And then there was that stage where, the embryonic stage and the fetal stage, and then, for 9 months, and then we come to this life, and then there's childhood, right? Life is basically blown into the person becomes alive, right? And then from there, they go all the way to the end of that journey. That journey may be very long, it could be very short. At the end, it all seems like one day, it all seems like a moment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the wisdom behind that process. It says in Surah تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. Surah 67, please remember to turn off your cell phones, please. Surah 67 verse 2, Allah says, He is the one that created death and life. He created death and life. And death is mentioned first because, according to some scholars, that is the original state. We were non-existent. And then we were brought, and then life was given to us. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He brings the living out of the dead, and then the dead out of the living, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we were dead, and then we became alive, and then we will die, and then we will be resurrected again. We will be given. So there are 2 stages of death and 2 stages of life. 2 lives and 2 deaths. Right? As the Quran says, كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا, you were dead, ثم أحياكم, then He gave you life, ثم يميتكم, then He will take you, these lives back, ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون, then He will resurrect you again and you shall be returned to Him. And that is the final. So there are 4, total of 4 stages. What is the purpose of that? Death, life, death, life. Between the first and the second stage, between the first death, between the first death and the second death, there is a life. Between the first death and the second death, there is a life. And that life was meant to be a testing period. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to test and try and see which of you is best in terms of their deeds and their actions. So this is it. So you're given this chance, you're brought to this life after you were not existent, and then you're going to be given a specific period of time that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, right? And that's why one of the researchers basically was talking about how this is life, this is a person's life span. This is life. Now we don't know what the length of this is. It could be 70 years, It could be 80 years, it could be 100, it could be 30, it could be 40, nobody knows. And you don't know where you are on that. If this is the beginning, because this is my right, and this is the left, right, and this is the end, right? You don't know whether you're here, whether you're halfway, 3/4 of the way, or whether you're like 1/3 of it. You don't know. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this again in Surah Ar-Rum, Surah 30, verse 54. Allahu alladhi khalaqakum min ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة يخلق ما يشاء وهو العليم القدير. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created you, verse 54, who created you in a state of helplessness, weakness, and that is as fetus, and then as an infant, and as a toddler, and then we start gaining strength gradually. We gain strength, and we started walking at one point when we gained strength, and our muscles got stronger and stronger, and we continue to gain strength. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِن بَعْدِ ضَعْفٍ قُوَّةٍ, then gave you strength after weakness. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course this is the general rule. Of course there are some exceptions. Some people have some kind of disorder, or some kind of rare disease, issues with their muscles or their bones and stuff like that, and they may not be able to gain that strength. But normally the general rule is that people keep gaining strength, getting stronger and stronger and stronger until they reach their peak. In the old days it used to be 40, nowadays it might be like 25 or 30, with the type of food and lifestyle that we have. And then the decline starts. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِن بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ ضَعْفًا وَشَيْبًا. And I don't want anyone here to panic or anything, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and then after that strength gave you weakness and gray hair. And so gray hair is associated with weakness. Some people might say, wait a minute, I have gray hair all over, but I'm still strong. And inshallah ta'ala, ask Allah to give you strength and to bless your strength. The Prophet, peace be upon him, by the way, he was 60 something, and he only had, Anas says that he had total of 20 gray hair between his beard and his alayhi salatu wassalam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ, He creates whatever He wills. So this is basically the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the curve that everyone goes through. So there are these stages. Then comes the final journey, or what we will call, it is really not the final journey, because it's just a final journey in this life, but there is a journey after it. And as I said, inshallah, if this is of an interest, inshallah, we can start after Ramadan series that we call Journey to the Hereafter, maybe from after Ramadan until the end of the year. Journey to the Hereafter, what that is worthy of one considering it to be final destination, because truly Jannah is a final destination. By the way, even the qabr is not final destination. Your grave is not final, because you're only there temporarily. And then after that there is resurrection. It is Jannah. That is the aim of a believer, right? Everything else is a stop, layover. Sometimes it's lengthy, sometimes it's short, right? And that's why someone says, treat this life like you treat any hub. When you travel, let's say anyone knows Delta Airlines, what is one of their major hubs? People who travel a lot. Atlanta, Georgia. Right? Big, huge airport, they have, huge terminal. Right? So you go there, you might get caught up because of a storm or something like that, and you might, stay there. You don't know how long you're going to stay there. So you're there stuck for a while. So imagine someone just, putting a tent there. So he said, just treat this life like you treat a hub, where you're there for a few hours, layover, waiting for your connection flight. So when you're there at the airport, you try to you don't spend as much as you would spend if you're home, right? You try to only get by, right? Eat, drink, whatever you have to do, pray, maybe find a musalla. And by the way, most major airports nowadays, they have chapels or musallas, so you can just pray there. Atlanta does have one. The only miserable airport that doesn't have that is LAX. I mean, we need to do something about it. But most major airports do have something. So that's what you do. You pray, you eat, you drink, you use, and then that's it. You don't find people investing and saying, oh Allah, I like these chairs right here, I'm going to buy a few, I'm just going to settle here and have a, come to, you don't find. So he said you might want to treat life like that. Only get what you need to get by. This is an opinion of someone. Then comes death, and the Prophet ﷺ talks about it, and that's what I want to, inshallah, talk about, and then maybe take questions. عن البراء بن عازب رضي الله عنه قال. Listen to this hadith. It is an interesting hadith. Some people find it to be like scary or horrifying, but this is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is a reality that is awaiting everyone. And one of the scholars said, I'm amazed at how people treat a certainty, something that is so certain, death, as if it's a doubtful matter. Yani, if you ask people, do you have any doubt that you will die? Nobody has any doubt. It's like certainty. Everybody agrees on this, right? Yet, when you look at our behavior, our lifestyle, our attitude about death, we treat it like it's not going to happen to us. It will happen to anyone else but not me. SubhanAllah. So he said, I'm amazed at how we manage to do this. How we manage to treat a certainty like it's a doubtful matter. So the Prophet ﷺ, or Al-Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhu, said, in a hadith that is collected by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, and the hadith has an authentic chain of narrators, خرجنا مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في جنازة. We left with the Prophet ﷺ, we joined the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم in a janazah, في جنازة رجل من الأنصار. We followed a funeral procession of a man from the Ansar. And we know who the Ansar are. The Ansar are the helpers, or the group, the companions who were from Medina, who received the Sahaba who came from Mecca, the immigrants. So they are the indigenous Muslims of Medina. He says, فانتهينا إلى القبر ولما يلحد. He said, we arrived at the grave, but the lahd was not completed, was not done. So what is lahd? For those people who are interested, I wish I had a board here. There were two styles. The Meccans, when they buried, the grave, right? It's about what is it? Like 3 feet wide, right? 3 feet wide, maybe 6 feet or 7 feet, long, and maybe about what? Maybe about like 5 feet deep or 6 deep, depending on where you dig it. The people of Mecca used to do what is known as shaq, which is very, by the way, common or popular in the Indian subcontinent. Right? Shaq. What do? They dig the grave, and then when it comes to the floor, or of that grave, they make a trench. They make a trench enough to fit the body. And then they place the body there. It's deep enough to basically fit the body. And then they cover it. They cover the body. So the body is in a little room in the ground. Inside the ground, another room within the grave itself. They cover it. That is called shaq. And that is what the people of Mecca used to do. Now the people of Medina used to do what is known as lahd. Lahd is the grave all the way, and then they dig a room to the side of the grave, on the side. So it is like an L-shaped, if you were to imagine that, an L-shaped. And then they place the body in there, of course with the right side, they lay the person on his right side, or her right side, with his face, or her face facing the Qibla. The face is supposed to be facing the Qibla. Now the person is facing the Qibla, and that's where the opening is, right? And then they put, basically, they block it with anything, you know, with any material. They close it. So the person is in a room or in a box next to the grave, to the side of the grave, L-shaped. Now you know that is lahd. That is lahd. And that's what the people of Medina used to do. And I know that someone is going to ask at the end, how was the Prophet ﷺ buried? We'll talk about that later. So the Sahaba said that because this was a man from the Ansar, when they arrived to the grave, the lahd was not done. They only dug it, and they were trying to basically dig or make, you know, the lahd, the side. As they were doing that, because the janazah arrived, they put the janazah next to the grave. He said, فَجَلَسَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَجَلَسْنَا حَوْلَهُ. So the Messenger of Allah sat, and we all sat around him. And this is from the manners of the Sahaba. They never say, oh, that we sat, or the Prophet sat with us. They never say that. They say the Prophet sat, and we sat with him. The Prophet left, and we left with him. We were with the Prophet. You would never find a companion saying the Prophet was with us. So when we were with the Prophet, right? So the Prophet sat, and they all sat around him. Then he says, كَأَنَّ عَلَى رُؤُوسِنَا الطَّيْرِ, as if we have birds standing, you know, on our heads. Meaning, that's an expression in the Arabic language, meaning that we were all quiet. We were all quiet. Then وفي يده عود ينكت به الأرض فرفع رأسه فقال استعيذوا بالله من عذاب القبر. And in the Prophet ﷺ's hand there was a stick. With it he was basically the Prophet ﷺ, he had a stick with which he was scratching the ground. And then he says, seek refuge in Allah from the torment of the grave, from the punishment of the grave. And then he repeated that 3 times, twice or 3 times. The companion forgot. And then he says, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ الْمُؤْمِنِ. The Prophet started describing the journey to the grave. He said, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِذَا كَانَ فِي انْقِطَاعٍ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَإِقْبَالٍ مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ نزل إليه ملائكة من السماء بيض الوجوه كأن وجوههم الشمس معهم أكفان من أكفان الجنة وحنوط من حنوط الجنة حتى يجلس منه مد البصر ثم يجيء ملك الموت عليه السلام حتى يجلس عند رأسه فيقول أيتها النفس الطيبة اخرجي إلى مغفرة من الله ورضوان. قال فتخرج تسيل كما تسيل القطرة من السقاء فيأخذها فإذا أخذها لم يدعوها في يده طرفة عين حتى يأخذوها فيجعلوها في ذلك الكفن وفي ذلك الحنوط ويخرج منها كأطيب نفحة مسك وجدت على وجه الأرض. قال فيصعدون بها فلا يمرون على ملأ من الملائكة إلا قالوا ما هذه الريح الطيب فيقولون فلان ابن فلان بأحسن أسمائه التي كانوا يسمونه بها في الدنيا حتى ينتهوا بها إلى السماء الدنيا فيستفتحون له فيفتح لهم فيشيعه من كل سماء مقربوها إلى السماء التي تليها حتى ينتهي به إلى السماء السابعة فيقول الله عز وجل اكتبوا كتاب عبدي في عليين وأعيدوه إلى الأرض فإني منها خلقتهم وفيها أعيدهم ومنها أخرجهم تارة أخرى. قال فتعاد روحه في جسده فيأتيه ملكان فيجلسانه فيقولان له من ربك فيقول ربي الله فيقولان له ما دينك فيقول ديني الإسلام فيقولان له ما هذا الرجل الذي بعث فيكم فيقول هو رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيقولان له وما علمك فيقول قرأت كتاب الله فآمنت به وصدقت فينادي منادي من السماء أن صدق عبدي وفي رواية أن قد صدق عبدي فأفرشوه من الجنة وألبسوه من الجنة وافتحوا له بابا إلى الجنة. قال فيأتيه من ريحها وطيبها فيفسح له في قبره مد بصره. Okay, I'll stop right there. The Prophet ﷺ said, verily, when the believing servant of Allah, when a believer, man or woman, is leaving this world and entering in the next, when physicians give up on him and there is no hope and the person is dying. Angels from heaven descend to him. Their faces are so bright like the sun. They're as bright as the sun, the brightness of them. And they come in a very good form and good condition, carrying with them burial sheets, kafan, and scents from paradise. The scents that we use in this life is not compared, you can't compare that to what they bring. Now that is at the spiritual level, something that we don't see. But the person who's dying, he sees that. And he smells that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ. When the person is dying, right, we are closer to him than his jugular vein, or we are closer to the human being than his jugular vein. And when the person is dying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ. We are much closer to him than you are. You have those of us who are standing around some of their loved ones as they were dying. Allah says, we are closer to him. The angels, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is closer to that person. وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ. But you see not. You can't see. And I don't know if any one of you have witnessed or was around someone as they were dying. SubhanAllah, they are just looking, staring, you feel like they're there, they're still alive, but they're not with you. They're looking at someone else, or at something else, they're staring, right? So the angels basically come in this form, which gives the person glad tidings. And by the way, it is at that moment that the Prophet ﷺ said, in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَنْ أَحَبَّ لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ لِقَاءَهُ. Whosoever longs or is anxious to meet Allah, he or she, or they're anxious to their meeting with Allah. أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ لِقَاءَهُ. Allah will be anxious to meet them, or to meet with them. And whosoever, وَمَنْ كَرِهَ لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ كَرِهَ اللَّهُ لِقَاءَهُ. Whoever hates to meet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates to meet him. When Aisha heard this, she said, O Messenger of Allah, nobody gets excited about death. Nobody likes to die. I mean, we all have this resentment or this fear, this natural fear from death. Nobody wants to die. He said, that's not, Aisha, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, when the person is dying, he or she will see what is awaiting for them. They get glimpses or they get hints from what they see around them, from the demeanor and from the looks and from the angels. They can tell that whatever is going to come next is better. Likewise, if it's bad, then they know what is going to come next is worse. So he said, at that point, the believer becomes anxious and excited to, because that becomes their best day. And that is why when Aisha radiallahu anha said, she reported when the Prophet was dying, the last 3 words that he uttered, the last 3 words that he repeated, according to Aisha, he repeated twice. He said, بَلِ الرَّفِيقُ الْأَعْلَى. Nay, I rather be with the highest companion. I rather be with the highest companion. He repeated that twice. Aisha said, at that point, I knew that he was being given the choice. The Prophet was being, because the Prophet said in the hadith before that, he said, no Prophet had ever died, except that the angel of death will ask for his permission. So when the angel of death basically asked the Prophet ﷺ whether he wants to die or not, the Prophet ﷺ said, no, I rather be with the highest companion, meaning I rather be with Allah. And these were the last 3 words that he said, and he repeated them twice. Shortly after that, Aisha said, the head of the Prophet ﷺ fell, because she had him on her chest. She was, holding him, and she said, I felt the Prophet ﷺ. She said, I knew that he died. And that was his last wish. And that was his last answer, alayhi salatu wasalam. So, from their demeanor, the person will know and they become anxious. Again. So he said, Aisha, when the believer sees what is awaiting, he becomes anxious and Allah becomes anxious and happy, to meet with him. And when, of course, the wrongdoer sees what is finally the moment comes, they don't want to die, and they become, they're so terrified, and they don't want to meet with Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't want to meet with them. Right? So, in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ continues and he says that they come and they sit. They descend in that kind of condition with sheets, burial sheets, and scents from paradise. And they sit before him at a distance as far as his eye can see. And if you wonder, I don't know if you, again, how many of you, I don't know how many of you were around people who were dying. If you wonder why a person has, subhanAllah, I've seen this, so many people reported this to me, and I've seen it myself, some relatives and some very close people. The person will be staring at a distance. They're not looking at the people around them. They may be surrounded totally by everyone, pretty much surrounded, right? But they're looking through those people who are around them. And they're not paying attention to everybody else or whatever, the commotion and all the, whatever is happening around them. They're fixed, their eyes are fixed on something else. That's because they see the angels. And the angels have to wait for that moment. At that point, maybe the person is basically struggling with the agony of death, sakarat al-maut, but the angels wait. Those angels wait for the arrival of the angel of death. The Prophet ﷺ said, then the angel of death comes to the person, sits at his head. And again, nobody sees this except the person. And says, O good soul, come out to your Lord's forgiveness and pleasure. Remember what Allah said in Surah Al-Fajr, Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna. O peaceful soul, come out. Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya. Come back to your Lord, return to your Lord, pleased, and He shall be pleased with you. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. And you shall enter and be amongst my servants, my righteous servants, and you will enter my paradise. That is the glad tidings or the news that the soul will be given. The Prophet says that the soul of the believer becomes so anxious that it comes out easily, it comes out flowing, like water flows out of a container. It comes out with ease. And we're talking about we're not talking about the agony. A person might have some agony of death and might suffer before. But the very last moment, one of the signs is that the person's soul just comes out easily. Sometimes you won't even be able to tell whether they died or until you look at them or until some of those machines indicate that, or until basically they stop breathing. You can't. And subhanAllah, again, I've seen something like that. I've seen people, basically, they just take a deep breath, and then everything stops. That's it. And then you're waiting for them to basically inhale. Nothing. That's it. It's over. Very, very, very easy. So the Prophet ﷺ says, when it comes out, and the angel of death is about to approach it or hold it, or embrace it, thereupon the soul flows. The angels, and as that happens, the Prophet ﷺ said, all of the angels between the sky and earth supplicate for Allah's blessings upon him, upon that soul. So when the believer is dying, the angels actually are engaged in this process. They're part of this, and the doors of heaven will be opened for that person. And the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith says that those angels, when the angel of death basically embraces the soul, those angels don't wait too long before they jump on it and they embrace it and they take the soul. What does the soul look like? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. They take the soul and they wrap it in those sheets. And they embrace it with this scent that they have. And then they basically elevate or take it up to heaven. The Prophet ﷺ says, then the gates of heaven will be opened for this soul, one after another, all 7 heavens. Every time they come upon one of those heavens or one of those gates, the angels of this heaven, receive it, and they follow it all the way to the next heaven. And each time they come upon one of those heavens, the angels will say, what is this beautiful and pleasant smell? The angels who are basically accompanying this soul, they will say, this is the soul of so and so, naming him or her with the most beautiful or with the most pleasant of his names in this life. Whatever name he loved the most or he was known with, that's what they will. So the angels pray for that individual and welcome that soul. And again they follow it to the next heaven, and to the next one, to the next one. From each heaven, the highest ranked angels follow that soul to the next one, until they end up above the seventh heaven. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, register my servant fi illiyin, basically in the records of those who earn the highest ranks in paradise, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, take back his soul to his body. In the meanwhile, the burial process, we are left with the body. The soul is gone, we are left with the body. And then subhanAllah, the moment that happens, after death by the way, right? You have noticed that the person loses his or her identity. And they start referring to that person as what? The body. In fact, subhanAllah, one of those things that is really, kind of painful here is how the body of the deceased or the dead people is mistreated. And in Islam, you have to handle the body of a dead person, right? Especially whether it's a believer or not a believer, but a dead person, especially a believer, you should handle his body like you would handle him if he was alive. But here we refer to it as the body, put it in a bag, put it, shove it around and stuff like that. They tie a little, tag, at the toe just to identify the body. Very disrespectful, right? But people refer to it as the body. What happened? You still have the body. You still have the 6 feet. You still have the 210 pounds of meat that used to walk around. You still have it. No. The person loses his identity. They say, oh, so-and-so left. He left us. He passed away. He passed on. Gone. SubhanAllah. That's because the body gets its value from the soul. So when the soul departs and the separation takes place, that's it. We refer to that as the body. In the meanwhile, as the body is being prepared for burial, right, the soul is awaiting for the body to be buried. And once the body is buried, the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, take the soul of my servant back to his body. And the soul will be brought back, and it will not be reunited, meaning it will not get into the body in a way where the person becomes alive again, but rather it will be basically somehow there is a link or connection between the soul and the body. Yani very similar, except that the body will be dead, very similar to the connection between the soul and the body when a person is asleep. Except that the body, the flesh itself, and the cells, the body cells and the organs are all dead. They no longer function because it's not a full union. Don't ask me about the extent of that union because we don't know. Again, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. That's a mystery that we have no clue of, and we don't have to be very hasty because everyone will experience it. Now, I will stop right here because from the works of our scholars and from the opinion of our scholars, there seems to be a connection between the soul and the body during this stage. Some kind of connection. And the soul is either aware or feels what happens to the body. Right? Anything that happens, the way the body is treated and all that. But the Prophet tells us that at this stage basically, the soul, once the person is buried, the soul is brought back, and then the person or the soul will be approached with 2 angels. And the 2 angels basically sit the person up. Again, not physically, but rather spiritually. Now the conversation is between the angels and the soul. But the soul is attached to the body. Right? And they will question that person. So the believer also will be questioned, as the Prophet ﷺ told us. Right? The Prophet ﷺ told us in the hadith, and let me just go over that they will begin to ask him questions. They say, who is your Lord? That's the first question. He replies, Allah is my Lord. La ilaha illallah. They continue, what is your religion? He answers, Islam is my religion. Islam, state of submission, Islam is my religion. They proceed with their questioning, asking him, who is the man, or what do you know about the man that has been sent to you? He responds, he is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Finally, they ask him about his deeds and his knowledge, to which he replies, I read Allah's book and I believed in it and I followed it. Right? So upon saying that, and not anyone, by the way, not everyone will be able to answer like that. Not everyone. Only true believers who had connection with those concepts. Those who had connection with Allah, it will be easy. Why? Because they had connection. Those who had connection with the Qur'an, those who had connection with the Sunnah, they will easily be able to identify the Prophet ﷺ as the messenger, because their lifestyle basically was in alignment with his teachings and his traditions. They will be able. That's when the Prophet ﷺ said, then a voice will call, or a voice will be heard. My servant has told the truth, so clothe him in the clothing of paradise, spread for him furnishings of paradise, and open for him a window with a view of paradise. Thereupon he is engulfed by a breeze of fresh air and fragrance, while his grave is expanded for him. And that stage for the believer will be like a very pleasant, sweet sleep. In fact, in the hadith it says that when the believer sees that, he will say, Oh Allah, when he says that, and he knows what is awaiting for him is even better than that, he will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to start the Day of Judgment. To start the Day of Judgment. In that period, I mean, the scholars say that period will seem like a very pleasant, sweet dream. And what we know from like a very pleasant, if you're very comfortable, you have a very deep, very comfortable, very peaceful sleep, and especially if you have like a very nice dream, that you're enjoying, it's quick. You won't feel it. And nightmares, no matter how short they are, they feel like eternity, right? So this is what the Prophet ﷺ said about the journey, the last or the final journey of the believer from this life to the life of al-barzakh, which is before the hereafter. And of course the hadith continues, it's a lengthy hadith. In it the Prophet ﷺ talks about the opposite. In contrast to this, the Prophet ﷺ talks about what happens to disbelievers and wrongdoers, and and it would be like, with everything that I said, pretty much it's the opposite of what I said. That was not my intention to go over it, right? But rather to give the glad tidings for those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they believe in al-ghayb. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. So if you have any question, inshallah, regarding the process of death or anything of that nature, inshallah, I'll be more than happy to answer it. Anything that is related to the subject, somehow, I'll be more than happy to answer it, inshallah. The floor is open for your questions. You want to take this? Just because you told me not to move around, Danny. You told me not to move around, right? Okay. Wa alaikum salam.
I have two questions. One is, I heard about the Asr prayer, that the person will be shown the sun. Is it true, and then he remember to do Asr prayer right away. Sun is going down at that position.
After his death?
At the grave, in the grave. Before asking questions.
No, I have not come across any authentic narration that I'm not.
Okay, second thing.
By the way, one thing of course we have to be aware of when it comes to the hereafter, the punishment of the grave, what happens on the Day of Judgment, all these things, there are a lot of narrations that may not be authentic. So we have to be careful, we have to basically be able to filter those and only only follow that which is authentic, which has been verified. Yes.
About wishing for the death, there's something that we in Quran.
Wishing.
Somebody should not wish for death or.
The Prophet ﷺ, the brother is asking, is there anything about wishing death? Wishing death. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا يتمنين أحدكم الموت لضر أصابه أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. None of you shall ask for death or wish for death because of some kind of pain or because of some kind of hardship or difficulty that he is or she are experiencing. You should not ask for death. فإن كان لابد فاعلا. And if the person must, let's say someone has given up, that's it. Doctors, medicine basically gave up on that person. That person is in a lot of pain, and they're just, the quality of life is very. The Prophet ﷺ said, if one must do that, then let him say, you still should not ask for death, but let him say, the Prophet teaches us a hadith or a dua. Let him say, Allahumma توفني ما كانت اللهم أحيني ما علمت الوفاة خيرا لي وتوفني ما علمت الوفاة خيرا لي. اللهم أحيني ما علمت الحياة خيرا لي وتوفني ما علمت الوفاة خيرا لي. There are different narration versions of it. Basically, the Prophet said that the person then should say, "Oh Allah, give me life or prolong my life as long as you know that life is good for me. And oh Allah, bring death upon me as long as death is good for me. So whatever is good for me, and you know what is good for me, cause it to happen." That should be the way the person. But no one should say, that person should not say, "Oh Allah, take me, oh Allah, make this my end," And in fact, the Prophet discourages us from having negative thinking and negative thoughts. The Prophet went to visit a sick person, and by the way, one of the teachings of the Prophet is when we visit the sick, that we need to basically motivate them, and we need to cheer them up, and we need to basically boost their morale and make them feel better. Don't tell them any bad stories and how like you had a cousin that had a very similar disease and just didn't make it, and that is the worst thing that you can ever do to someone who's dying. They're already in a lot of pain. The last thing that they want is someone to do that. So the Prophet ﷺ tells us that. So the Prophet comes to visit this old Bedouin who was sick, and the Prophet ﷺ wants to cheer him up, and he said, "Tahur." He said, hopefully this is purification for you. So he said, "No, this is not purification." He started complaining. This is this and that. He said, and it shall cause death, or it shall make me go to the grave. I will die out of it. The Prophet ﷺ responds, the Prophet didn't like this kind of attitude. He said, then it is as you wish. And the man didn't make it, he died. So, it is very important to keep positive attitude. Now, yes?
I have a question. The first question is, does the soul has some gender or not?
Does the soul have what?
Gender.
Gender.
Male, female gender. So the second main question is, how Rasulullah was laid down in the grave, in the Makkah way, the step trench, or in the L-shaped like
Okay. First question, does the soul have gender? I don't know. What is gender to begin with? Male or female? I guess my assumption was the soul of a female is female and the soul of a male is a male. But is it gender specific? I guess when you see, the thing is, okay, here's what I'm going to say. The Prophet ﷺ was asked about the nature of a ruh. Ruh is another word for soul or spirit. And the soul. He was asked about it, about the nature of a ruh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to say the following: قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. The ruh, the knowledge of the ruh and its condition or its conditioning and its nature is only known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why when I started, I said this is an area where you cannot speculate or where you cannot like do some guesswork, but rather leave the knowledge up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I would say only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. As for the second question, how was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam buried? Very interesting. When the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim took care of the body of the Prophet, or when the close, the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the close members of the family of the Prophet, and some of his companions took care of the body of the Prophet, they basically washed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's body. And by the way, they did not expose his body, meaning they did not take off his clothes. They washed him with his clothes on, alayhi salatu wasalam. Whatever he died in, his garment in which he died, they kept it on. Because they were actually debating. They said the Prophet ﷺ was covered, laying down where he died, alayhi salatu wasalam, bi-abi huwa wa ummi. So they said, what should we do? They were so, you can imagine what kind of, So they said, what should we do? And as they were sitting, debating whether they should take off his clothes and wash him or not, they heard a voice. They didn't know where it came from or who it was, saying, do not uncover the Messenger of Allah. Don't expose the body of the Messenger of Allah. So they decided to wash him with his garments on him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So they washed him, they poured the water, and they did everything from above his garment, and they shrouded him in his garment. So they never took off his garment. So if anyone, by the way, claims that they have the garment of the Prophet in which he died, they're lying, because they never took it off. They shrouded him with his garment. And they put him in 3 rolls of white sheets. Right? And then they left the body there. Up until that point, the Muslims don't have a leader. Up until that point, the Muslims don't have a leader, except that Abu Bakr is leading the salah. But when it comes to offering salatul janazah, every person, every individual came and offered his respect and prayed salatul janazah upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as individuals. They came in small groups into that room. They never took the body out of the room. They left it there, and the men first came, the elders of the community came, and they walked in the small groups, and they offered salatul janazah, and then they would leave, and then the next group of people come, and then after that I believe it was women and then children, or children and then women, until the whole community basically prayed upon the Prophet ﷺ, and that process took a day and a half. The Prophet passed away midday on a Monday, and he was buried Wednesday night. So that's how long it took. When they wanted to bury the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't know where to bury him. Should they bury him next to his uncle in Uhud? Or should they bury him, or should they take him to Mecca? Or should they bury him I don't know if Mecca was an option. Or should they bury him with his companions and his children who were buried in Al-Baqi'? And again, as they were debating about that, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, I heard him saying that no prophet dies except that he will be buried where he died. So they decided to basically move the body of the Prophet ﷺ to the other side of the room, and then dig beneath, right where his body was laid. So they dug right there where the Prophet ﷺ passed. That's where they dug. Now Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and the Sahaba prayed. Abu Bakr prayed. He said, "Oh Allah, choose for your Prophet the best." And they sent to 2 people, 2 individuals who were specialized in digging graves. Abu Ubaidah, who was from Mecca, and Abu Talha, who was from Medina. Abu Ubaidah got caught up with something, and by the time he made it, Abu Talha had already arrived. And the style of the people of Medina was what? Lahd. So the Prophet ﷺ was buried in a lahd. Lahd meaning that he was buried to the side of the grave. So they dug in an L-shaped. And ever since then, that basically became the most dominant, not the only sunnah, but the most dominant tradition. And it's okay to bury with a shaq. That is, it's absolutely. So that became basically the most common or the most dominant way of burying. And if you ever went to Medina and you witnessed people being buried in Al-Baqi', that's what you will see. Always there's a grave, and then to the side there's a little room where the body is laid. No. So that's how the Prophet ﷺ was buried. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Yes. I don't know. Wa alaykum salam.
Question on even in our household, we have this discussion about punishment of the grave. And sometimes I just have to just walk away from it and say, you know what, I just have to say the nasiha of Rasul. When the man came to him and said, when is the hour? And he said, what have you done to prepare for it? So I take the same kind of orientation about the punishment of the grave. You have two sides going back, heard it for years now, going back and forth for saying, one side...
Very, like the graphic description of the punishment of the grave and the snakes and, and the hereafter. And that fascinates people. A lot of people get fascinated with these kind of details. And kind of distracting them or losing focus from the main issue and the main point. Now, as is it part of one's, could aqeedah, we need to go back to the fundamental issue of, could aqeedah be based on ahad narrations? There are differences of opinion on that matter. The opinion of the jumhur, the opinion of the majority of the scholars, and the one that I feel very comfortable with and confident about, is that it does. It is hujjah, it does establish aqeedah. So that I have no problem with it. It does establish aqeedah. But my issue was, again, what is the point of it? I mean, what is the point of the Prophet ﷺ describing even the Qur'an? Let's take the Qur'an. Qur'an is mutawatir. The Qur'an gives us graphic details and descriptions about what is awaiting for the believers in paradise. And in many verses, or in some verses, it talks about very, very detailed, or it gives you a lot of description about what is the horror of hellfire and the day of judgment. What is the point? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ الَّذِي يُخَوِّفُ اللَّهُ بِهِ عِبَادَهُ يَا عِبَادِ فَاتَّقُونَ. That's the whole point. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you something, there are some people, we have to understand that there are all kinds of people, different psychologies, there are some people who are driven by fear. And there are some people who are motivated by, positive, feelings and positive reinforcement. That's what motivates them. But to me, it is problematic when we all become nothing but those who are driven by their fear. And like, for example, one time I was telling some people about salah and how important it is, and they said, "Can you tell us about the punishment of the grave?" I'm like, I'm telling you about something greater. I'm telling you about salah. And how great of a connection it is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how important and how great it is. And they're like, yeah, because you have to scare us. And that is the effect of Hollywood horror movies. And the problem with that kind of mentality is that it doesn't last. It is not based on conviction. It is not based on real authentic connection. But rather, right? It's a quick fix, temporary. Oh, you're scared and you want to feel better, so you pray a couple of rak'ahs and you're good for a day or two or three, and then what happens? That fades away. That fades away, right? So, a believer, the best of the believers are those who are driven by their love and their hope or their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if I covered all the points that you asked. You kind of just...
I didn't want to be open the whole...
Yeah. But you basically asked what I call, what I classify as a fully loaded question. Okay. Sisters did not ask any question. Yes?
What you're saying in the hadith that you said about this means that everybody's destination is no one else equals inside the grave, right?
Yeah, are you done with your question?
How does this align with the many other hadiths that we heard about people coming at the last moment and putting two good deeds and then then go down to the paradise?
Well, the last moment happens before death. And what we said about the grave and what happens after death. Uthman radiallahu anhu, it was said that when Uthman sees a grave, and especially an open grave, he would cry. So they said to him, hellfire is mentioned, paradise is mentioned, many things are mentioned, and you don't cry. But when you see a grave, you cry. He said, this is the first stage of akhirah. هذا أول منازل الآخرة. He said, this is the first stage of akhirah. If this is good, whatever comes after it will be better. And if this is bad, if this is horrible, then whatever comes after it is even much more miserable. So he said that's why this is a very critical, basically to him it's a critical stage, and it's a very profound and strong reminder for him. So again, the person will know their fate after their death, or will have an idea. SubhanAllah, regarding the grave, the punishment or the reward in the grave, in this hadith there is specifically the Prophet ﷺ mentions that the person will have to basically live or deal or be in the company of his deeds. And in this hadith it mentions that the deeds will come in the form of a person. If they're good deeds, then in the form of a good-looking, pleasant individual, keeping that person company, keeping good company. And if it's the opposite, then the opposite. But basically, whether it's metaphors, the point here is that the person will be living with his actions or his deeds. And in another hadith, the Prophet tells us that when a person goes to the grave, when the person is buried, 3 things follow him: his wealth, his children, and his deeds. 2 things go back and leave him behind with 1, and that is his deeds. But his wealth, the entire entourage, his car, maybe the cars that he paid for, right? His wealth will follow him, and his children and his family will follow him. They deliver him to his grave, right? And they leave him with 1 thing, his deeds. He's left with nothing, absolutely nothing. Your wedding ring will be taken out, everything, all your special, everything will be taken away from you, and only deeds accompany you. In fact, even the clothes that people basically is something that you don't even choose or you don't get to pick. Someone else will it is someone else's courtesy, right? So the person will be left with their deeds, and that's what we need to focus on. What kind of deeds do we want to be with? What kind of companionship do you plan for in that stage? That is the most important, the most critical question that we have to ask, to answer. And I'll leave you with this analogy. Imagine a criminal awaiting a trial. And then all of a sudden he's kept in a cell or in a room somewhere, in a chamber, where all of a sudden he is in the company of all the people that are going to testify against him and were his partners in his crime. What kind let's say he's there for an hour or 2 or 3 hours. These will be like the worst 3 hours of his life. He knows that these people are going to come out of that room with him, pointing fingers at him. He knows he's guilty. Right? Imagine the kind of 3 hours of waiting period that person will be in. And imagine a person, an innocent individual, or someone who is about to be awarded something, or rewarded. And he has this waiting room, he's about to receive his reward, and all those accomplishments that he have accomplished, whether it's a book or research paper or degrees, whatever, are brought, and he like the whole time he's looking at them, he's so excited, he doesn't know which one made it, and he's so excited about his work and whatever earned him that award, right? How exciting is that particular period. And he's so excited and so happy that he or she will not even feel that time, no matter how long the wait is. In fact, they're so anxious. Very similar. So good deeds are the achievement of the believer. They will be with him in his grave. Bad deeds and sins are the horrible earning of a wrongdoer, a criminal, and the person will have to face them or deal with them at one point or another. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from the people of good deeds. We ask Allah azza wa jalla to make us of those who prepare themselves for this journey, and those who will have a peaceful journey back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a peaceful journey back to paradise, where they will be, inshallah ta'ala, where we wish and we're looking forward to be reunited with the prophets and the Siddiqeen, the truthful followers of the prophets, and Shuhada, the martyrs, and As-Salihin, the righteous, virtuous servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.